Hi there, thanks for joining me. In this video, I'm going to show you how I constructed one of my illustrations from beginning to end, and it'll give you an idea of the workflow that I go through when I'm illustrating. It might be helpful for you when you're creating artwork too. So what we have here is an illustration I did, I believe it was in May of 2013, and it's a piece of fan art from a video game that I used to play when I was younger, called Secret of Mana for Super Nintendo. And this is just kind of my interpretation of what is going on in the game. The graphics in the game are really simplified, so it's kind of fun to use your imagination there and add some detail that wasn't normally there. It took a lot of just experimentation to end up at this point. I didn't really have that much of the background sketched out as far as the fine details. I kind of just put it together as I went along, and it came together. But I'll go ahead and show you that real quick. So I'm looking at this in Photoshop. This is the final iteration of the artwork, and you can see in the folder here I have all of these save files. These are all different versions of the artwork. It's the progression of the artwork, and I like to save these copies of the file because I might experiment and make a change and like it, and then other times I might not like it, and I might think I'm done with something and then realize, nope, I'm actually not done with it. I have to go back and fix something. And so it's nice to have these older versions just in case you need them. And you know, most of the time I don't ever use them, but it makes me feel a little more secure when I'm painting, that I can go ahead and just try some things that might not be a good idea, and I don't have to worry that trying these things is going to result in me ruining my piece. So we'll go ahead and go to the beginning here. So this is the first save I have. This is just a rough sketch that I did. I didn't focus too much on making it really super detailed. In fact, initially I started here with a really rough sketch. And you can see, you know, I just did kind of stick figures and things. I wanted to make sure that everything was in the right proportion, and I have my horizon line here just to help me kind of try to line everything up. So I had a rough idea of what I was going to do. And then from that sketch, I elaborated on it a little bit more. And each of these pieces in this sketch, this was all done in Corel Painter, just with a brush called Detail Oils brush. And I made all of these individual sketches on their own layers. That way, if I wanted to play around with the location of each of these objects, or the size, or even rotation, I can manipulate all of these pieces individually, and I don't have to worry about having to redraw a whole bunch of stuff. And you'll notice that in the end version here, everything did kind of get rearranged, and as this piece progresses, some of these characters and some of these elements got moved around a little bit. That's kind of the fun thing about working with the digital medium, is if you plan ahead, you can keep things pretty editable. Makes it harder to finish stuff sometimes, though, if you can keep going back to it. So I don't know if it's always such a good thing. But so we'll move forward from the sketch, and in this case I decided I wanted to do the background first, and a lot of the times I do at least try to put in a simple background, because your background more often than not kind of defines the colors that are going to be going on, and it might also kind of help you plan where the rest of your characters or the rest of your subject matter is going to be based on the environment. You know, I probably wouldn't have a person standing in the creek here. You know, they'd probably be on the trail, and you know, once the background's in, it kind of helps you figure out where everything else is going to go. But also, I kind of plotted out the background based on where the characters are. You know, some of this stuff isn't identical, but it's pretty close. You know, I like to kind of just make it up as I go along, and this is a fantasy piece, so it works really well for that. So here's my basic background. You'll notice in the layers palette, I probably used several layers here to accomplish this, but at some point I must have merged those layers, so I don't have those to show you, but you'll get to see some other layers in action here. on this next one. So I've added a bunch of stuff here. Because I added so many individual little layers that are just whatever nonsense, I didn't take the time to label them. Normally I would label things just to keep them more organized, but in this case I knew I was just going to end up merging these down anyways, so I didn't. But you can see here, this grass in the foreground here is a layer, and these little tree things, these little plants, are an individual layer that I can move around, and if I want to adjust them, it's really easy to do. There's also some different glows and things going on here. This is a screen layer, so it kind of helps the paint that you put down to blend with the background a little more naturally and lighten. If we were to set it to normal, it kind of tints the background and doesn't look good, so this works because of the screen blend mode. We'll move forward a little bit, and you can see I added some more detail, put some stuff in the foreground here, kind of just helping it come together a little more. There's some shadows here, cast shadows, still a whole bunch of layers, as you can see. If I turn some of them on and off, the stick, for instance, here, the branch on the ground, is separate from the shadow that's underneath it. So using a lot of layers is really, really helpful. It might seem kind of like overkill and it's just too tedious to do, but it really just helps you plan things out a little bit better and in a more organized manner. Moving forward, not much changed in that one. Here we go. I seriously rearranged some stuff here, moved some plants around, added some little flowers and some color and some tinting, more of these glows. This is all accomplished using the glow brush, and I'll go into glows in another video. Might even kind of work on this piece for that. This has a lot of nice glows. We'll move forward a little bit more, and you can see most of this background stuff is starting to get consolidated down to a single layer, and then this piece here, the background, is just one layer now. So way back here I have all these layers, but when we jump forward to here, I've flattened it. So if anywhere around this point from here on, if I decided, oh man, I really messed something up, I need to go back and fix something in the background, I could always go back a couple of versions and copy one of these plants or move something around, and then I don't have to start over from here. So that's kind of what it's about. It's making these, for lack of a better term, save points, which you know is probably kind of funny if you have played this game. There's save points in the game, and you have a save point here because you don't want to lose your progress. So each time you make major progress, you save and you make a copy. So we're here now, and I started to add in the flat colors for my characters. I knew I was going to just kind of do them in this particular style because I thought that would be cool, even though it does kind of clash with the background a little bit. I still think it looks cool. So I decided just to go ahead and do one whole character first, just to get a feel for the overall aesthetic of how I was going to do the rest of the characters. So this is kind of my test character here for the ink and the color. This is a pretty big piece, by the way, too. I think this is 18 by 24 inches at, let's see, 150 dpi. So it's a pretty good size piece. For this sprite character here, let's see, I have all the layers here organized in a group called SPR color. SPR is just short for sprite because that's what this character is called. And I have all of these components of the character on their own layers. I do this because it just makes it easier to paint and shade this character, and then I can move the character as a whole by just moving the group here. So if I wanted this character to be, if I wanted this character to move, I have to get the ink too. There we go. I can move it around, and of course I didn't paint this leg in here because it was going to be blocked by the rock, but if I wanted to, I could reposition things, make things bigger, make things smaller. Could do, pretty much anything. So that's really the main reason why using layers can be very helpful. To try to do all this stuff on a single layer would be very, very challenging. You would inevitably have to be doing a lot of repainting, especially with these glows. So we'll move forward a little bit. In this one, I added some shadow here, so I thought that kind of helped. It's kind of a dark forest and there's light rays kind of peeking in, so I thought that helped. At this point here, I'm starting to go ahead and just do the ink for the rest of the characters, and I'm also attempting to fix some of these sketches a little bit to get them looking better. Go forward a little bit more. You can see now I've got all the ink done for all of the characters. We can zoom in and see. Go forward again, and now I'm just going to go ahead and start filling in all of the flat colors and doing some of the shading. And using some different blend modes for this gave this sylphid character kind of an interesting glow effect. It made it look a little more mystical, I thought. I'm using the glow brush a lot here and there in a lot of different layers. For instance, on this shroom, this mushroom character, there are these, there's the glow in the foreground of the lightning bolt. There is the shadow right here that's being cast. So everything's kind of all on its own different layers. Move forward a little bit more, and here I just kind of quickly filled in all these characters just with solid colors. I think this was mainly because I was rearranging some things. I kept moving this hand character around a lot, and I didn't want it to be translucent anymore because the lines were interfering with each other. When this didn't have a white fill, it was just clear, and so the lines would intersect with the characters. So I think that's why I filled it in white there. I ended up moving this guy around a lot and just really couldn't find a good place for him until the very end. Moving forward a little bit more, you can see I finally added all of the basic coloring to everything. Totally don't like the color of these knuckles and this dress, but I think at the time I wasn't really thinking too much about what specific colors I wanted to make everything, but just kind of put in something. And then you'll notice later some of that stuff changes. Her colors change quite a bit, and as well the overall color. We'll go forward to the 22nd iteration here, and I've added some more glows to different things on the gem of this gauntlet, and she's got a light spell thing on her knuckles there that she's using. And when we get towards the end here, again, I'm consolidating more and more of these layers. So once I've decided that I'm pretty happy with all of this color that's on these characters, you'll notice I'll start to just collapse or merge these layers. So this is a good example of that. I decided that I was pretty much done messing around with anything else. At that point, I didn't think I was going to do any more major changes to the background or rearranging the characters. So from this point on, I'm just trying to just tweak the color of everything and get the overall balance to work. And here and there, I might add a few little details. But you'll notice it's just one layer now. Everything's merged down, looking about how I want it. And I'm not showing you every single version because, you know, I've skipped a few here and there. I'm showing you maybe about half of them because some of them are pretty similar. Like this one, for instance, it's about the same as the last one. All that's really changed is I added my signature. So that's something you could do on a separate layer. I think I decided that I wanted to have it, but maybe later I wouldn't want to have it there in some other cases. So it being on its own layer and me having it saved like that makes it so that, you know, I can easily change my mind if I want to. This one, there's a very subtle change to the overall color and contrast. If we do a before and an after, you can see it very subtly changes. I believe I shifted the hue ever so slightly, so this lightning bolt is a little more orange, and it shifted all the colors over just a little bit. And then this is the final version, and it didn't change a whole lot. I think the only thing that changed is that I noticed here, because this mushroom was on his own layer over the background, that it was covering the grass that's in the foreground, which doesn't make any sense because this grass should be in front of the mushroom here. There were a couple of things like that that I noticed, and you know, sometimes you think you're done with something and you look at it and you're really proud of yourself and you're like, ah, this is really good. And then a couple days later you look at it and you're like, whoa, I totally missed that. This is one of those things there. So then I did another version where I put the grass in front, and that was pretty easy to do. I just, you know, made a new layer here of some grass. I also added a few little blades over here. And, you know, if I look at it later again in another month or two and I see something I don't like that really needs to be changed, if I feel like changing it, I can always change it. There are some pieces that I've worked on years later and added to, and that's kind of the cool thing about it. So anyways, I hope that seeing this piece broken down from beginning to end kind of gives you an idea of one way that you can make a painting. This certainly isn't the only way to construct a piece of artwork, but this is the workflow that I like to use for this particular style. I do use other workflows. It really depends on what I'm doing, but for something that's more anime or comic book art style with ink lines and flat colors, this is really probably the easiest way to go if you're coloring something. So thanks for watching. If you found this information helpful, take just a quick second to like the video and share it on YouTube. That'll make it easier for other artists out there to find this information. Stay tuned for my next video.